And one thing that we talked about financially, and we're going to look at all this week actually, is charities that have been impacted by coronavirus. Because last week you heard the Chancellor Rishi Sunak announcing a £750 million package to keep struggling charities afloat during the pandemic. But with the focus on groups that are working on the front line, it seems that actually a lot of charities won't qualify for help.
We're starting this week with a look at a children's hospice in North London, which only recently opened its doors. Noah's Ark in Barnet supports seriously unwell children and their families. It offers residential care and respite, along with an adapted play area and soft play for visitors. But its funding's been hit hard.
Well, Sophie Andrews is the Chief Executive of Noah's Ark Children's Hospice and joins us now. Hello, Sophie.
Hi there. Hello.
Hi. And hello to Michael as well. Michael, your daughter Ellie goes there. Thanks for joining us.
Hello there.
So, Sophie, we said there your funding has been hit hard. What are we talking about?
Well, around £2 million of funding has just disappeared overnight because I don't think many people realise that hospices are generally reliant on donations and not statutory funded. So we have less than 10% funding from the government. And, we rely on the challenge events, the major donors, the people donating to us in the community. And 2 million of that has just been wiped out. So that it's really critical for us at this time to try and recoup that gap.
And that's because events aren't going ahead? Are people finding that they can't afford maybe a regular donation that they used to make?
I think mixture of things. I think, the big events, the London marathons, etc., being cancelled, the challenge events or the community events, people just in our local community or across London who were maybe doing challenge events for us, they've all been cancelled. But people, I guess, maybe are being furloughed themselves on that government scheme and perhaps aren't on the same income. So perhaps the charity donations are the first things to go. And we've been hit by that. So it's really important. I think my plea today is for people who are at home, who can't go out, to just think about the money they're not spending on the restaurant or the cinema, and a small donation to us could help us stay alive.
Michael, just talk us through what Ellie does there and how it helps you and her and the whole family.
Hello, Anne. Ellie has been the fortunate recipient of Noah's Ark Children's Hospital for many years. She was one of the first children who they helped when she was in early days, and they liaised with the hospital in the very difficult early months of her life, and they provided a source of support for my wife Sharon and I, and gave us hope when in the early days it was incredibly hard to think of anything other than if she would survive day to day. So there's a massive trust relationship we have with Noah's Ark. So that's the first and most important asset to us as a family. The physical activities they provide and have provided over the years have included annual balls, a summer and a winter ball, which was our first venture into a social life with our child, which Noah's Ark used to provide accessible places. And so creating the Ark was intended to have a focal point for families and with children such as Ellie, which is a massive achievement. It's taken many years of effort, skillful application, and many volunteers and superb CEOs, of which Sophie is the latest, who've put this together. It's purpose-built, so children like our daughter Ellie, who is wheelchair-bound, can use the facilities which have been purpose-designed, like sensory rooms, light stimulation, soft play areas, and outdoor facilities such as roundabouts, which are wheelchair-designed, and swings, again, which can take wheelchairs. So those physical qualities now are built on the trust relationship that we have with Noah's Ark. The outreach work they do with specialist workers who came in and supported us in the early days on a weekly basis were immensely important for us in showing us that there was something beyond a survival for our daughter. So there was a potential for thriving.
Yeah.
So again, it was a raising self-esteem and so on. So that's the combination, the physical space that they've got now, the outreach work which visits us into our home, so our daughter can be supported in her personal care and stimulation by skilled staff, is a lifeline for socially isolated families like our own.
And how are you and is she coping with things the way they are at the moment?
Well, thankfully, Ellie doesn't understand the magnitude of what Sophie clearly explained in her opening and what a devastating hit it has been. We certainly will lose out by not having a safe, purpose-designed place to be able to take Ellie in the rota of activities that Nose-Ark provide at the Ark in Barnet is a fantastic achievement of design and thought, which we would have been using on a regular basis were it not for this situation. Clearly, the respite environment for some of our kiddies down at the Ark who may be at the back end of life challenge and having that kind of care which Nose-Ark provides, it will be challenged. We are fortunate with Ellie that that's not a scenario that we're in at the moment. She's got life-limiting conditions in that she can't talk or walk or feed without manual support, but she's fortunate to not be in a scenario that Nose-Ark Children's Hospice has been designed to provide for. But nevertheless, being in that safe environment is vital for Ellie because she enjoys the stimulation, she enjoys the outdoor environment, which in that place that has been designed, we are not able to access.
Yeah.
And then the last, but also crucially, is the ability of Sophie's team to be able to get to us in the home so that we get the specialist visitations that we get with trusted and skilled people who can care for Ellie while we take a couple of hours off to, cook a meal, have a quick shower, do a little shopping, whatever it is that we need to do in double quick time.
Yeah, and all of those things are really important for you as well. And
absolutely.
Yeah, crucial. When we started talking about this, Sophie, one of the first things I mentioned was that the Chancellor announced this package of money specifically for charities, £750 million. How does that help you?
Well, within that, he also pledged 200 million to the hospice sector, which is great. I mean, we're appreciative of any government support. We know the government being asked for support everywhere. I think it's just important to remember there's over 200 hospices, so that's across adult and children hospices. So we've lost, as I say, 2 million ourselves, and this is 200 million across all hospices, and some will take a bigger sort of share of the pie. And my plea really when this is allocated is that it is given to the hospices that are more dependent on their voluntary income, such as ourselves, rather than some hospices are very fortunate to have already quite a lot of government funding. So the devil's in the detail in terms of how it's going to be allocated. We're grateful for it, but it doesn't answer it doesn't fix it. So I hope your listeners won't just think that they've heard that news and that hospices are okay because we're not. So an appeal again to your listeners to whatever amount they can give to do that, because it'll be very different. We don't know when this will finish. If it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, it's almost impossible to get that 2 million back. So we're in a sort of losing battle already. So, anything people can give us now would be really appreciated.
When will you hear about that allocation? When will you know what you're going to get?
We should hear in the next week, 2 weeks, what that might be. I don't think there's much we can do really to influence how it's allocated. So obviously we'll receive it, but obviously I don't think there'll be a point where they can negotiate with 200 hospices, and we'll all have our own argument why we feel our hospice needs that money more. So I hope it's a fair allocation. I'm sure it will be, but it won't plug the gap.
Thank you both for coming on. Sophie Andrews, who's the Chief Exec of the Noah's Ark Children's Hospice in Barnet. And thanks to Michael, thanks to you as well. His daughter, Ellie, as he described, goes there and it makes a real difference to her daily life.
Yes, elsewhere.